Well, my students requested that we paint pets this summer. It has been just a fabulous experience. And so I really haven't had a pet, and I hadn't thought about painting dogs and cats, and it's been a fabulous experience. Now this is Poke Chop. He actually works at our shop. We call him Mr. Handsome, and he dresses up with a tie and greets people. People love him. Now I still want to do a little more work to this because it's been a busy summer and I haven't finished everything. There's a couple areas that need some work, but you can see it's off to a pretty good start. This is another dog. I like the way it's light back here against the dark, and yet up here I left it light in the animal against the dark of the background. So those are all considerations we're going to put together in the final painting. Last year I went to South Africa and just had a fabulous experience. Looking forward to going back there in 2013. And one of the experiences we had was to go on a game preserve. And this is a fellow named Chris that we got to meet. Was really pretty exciting. He decided to get to know us a little better. We weren't interested, but as it was, we got some great shots. And this is a lovely little pet that some lady brought. I don't remember the name, but oh, isn't he a cutie? All snuggled up with his teddy bear. And this one's kind of scary. I don't know what possessed me to paint this dog, but it was fun to do, just to see if I could, you know, the whole idea of that expression. And this is kind of a popular guy. Again, I can just about hear him breathing. And you can see the backgrounds. None of the backgrounds have like water or trees or anything. We pretty much treat these like a portrait. And again, when the animal has a light area, you just simply put a darker area. And then in this one I decided to do kind of a vignette style, so the colors just kind of get lost into soft edges. And here's another one, not quite done, but it was really fun to paint. Good old collie. So the one I'm going to paint today, I just thought he was such a nice, friendly looking animal. This one has a little bit of a challenge because we're going to have to paint teeth and a tongue and part of his mouth, but I think it'll work out. And I always look for things like beautiful shadows here, the gorgeous eyes, and then this nose. Noses and eyes are very difficult. And if you are able to paint the eye and the nose and get that transition area between the nose and the rest of the body, see how dark it is? The nose isn't just stuck on there like a clown. It's integrated into all the subtlety, going from a dark to a mid-tone to a light. So that's very important. And the background here is green grass, but I think what I'm going to do is translate it into just tonal washes. And you can see I've drawn the animal, and one of the things I have the students do is put a lot of drawing on the paper. So they have to start developing all these lights and darks that you see. And it's really important because as you do this, as you spend time looking at the directional movement of all these hairs, how far back does this dark transition go? Then some of them are just kind of dots. I just want you to draw all that in. Here, even with the teeth, you can see we go quite dark with your shadows, back here with the shadows, the hair coming around the shadows. And then I'm going to have just some kind of lost edges down here. So we'll put a little bit of that in. Now one of the gals in my class last week, she actually raises these rabbits and shows them at national shows. And look at the detail she put into this. it was such a beautiful drawing, we actually made reproductions of it just as a drawing. This will reproduce beautifully as a card, and I don't have her painting. She did paint this. It was just stunning, just stunning. This lop-eared rabbit. She was thrilled too. So you can see it really pays to take the time and design all these little shapes with your pencil, because the paint's going to cover it up anyway. So let's get started. Now, to me, the real secret of painting animals is that you wet the paper first. Most people paint animals on dry paper, and they just look too tight. We want to get some nice soft things happening right off the bat. And this is basically my style of working anyway. I start wet and then layer on dry. And this layered style of painting is great. Now, I drew this with an HB pencil, and you can see that the colors didn't run. Now, if you draw this with H pencil, it's too light. You want it dark enough to see what you're doing. The other thing is, if you draw it with a 2B or a 4B, there's so much graphite, it smears all over. So just be sure that you give yourself an HB pencil is absolutely perfect. Now, we don't want to use primary colors to paint this little rascal. I'm going to move this down a little bit, and you can see the image I'm working from. This is raw sienna. It's a beautiful transparent color. So we're going to work up some of this raw sienna, and that's basically the color we'll use on his hair. And then we're going to come in with some quinacridone burnt orange in some of these darker areas. And you can also see there's some pink. There's quite a bit of pink in his head, his ears, of course his mouth. So I'm going to use a little quinacridone coral for the pink. I could also use permanent rose. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with those pink tones. So I can see all kinds of pink over in here. And you just put this down wet into wet. Soften the edges. They're going to be lost just because this is a soft, wet surface. I'm going to give it just a little more pink over in here. And I see some pink up on the head here too. And there's quite a bit of pink kind of working its way through here. Now remember, this is going to dry 18 to 20% lighter. So it's okay if it looks just a hair darker than you want. And there almost looks like a little pink under here. So we almost always start light to dark. Now I'm going to go into the raw sienna. This is an absolutely gorgeous color. And I'm just using about a number 8 brush. And I can see this is a good color for his ear. And it's a round brush. I like to use a round brush because it gives me these little pointed shapes to work with. Then out here we've got some lovely tonal washes here. Pick up a little of that color and transfer it over here. Keep the edges soft. So all this wet into wet is really fun. And then this color runs down into his eye here. And it runs down beside his ear. basically runs around in to form the ear. Again, I'm going to lose some of these edges. Now over here, it's darker. So we're going to come in and start darkening these areas. Now I am going to blend in more colors later, but I like to paint just with this one color, and then we'll blend those other colors in wet into wet. I gotta stay out of here. This is white hair in here. We gotta save the white. This is pretty white here. Let's lose this edge. Now this is all kind of dark in here. So we're just going to come in and lay in that color as quickly as we can. We want to work while our paper's still wet. And I'm going to do a vignette style again. So this is just, I'm just going to keep these edges wet. This is all going to be, first of all, done in this lovely raw sienna. Don't use yellow ochre. It's a color a lot of people think you can use yellow ochre in place of raw sienna, but yellow ochre is an opaque color, just full of white paint. We don't want any white in our paint. This is transparent watercolor. So see, we're going to come in here, just put down these base colors. Oh, he's starting to look like a dog. Love it. Now he's pretty dark over here. It's a nice contrast to that white. And notice how these colors aren't running into each other. It's because they're colors that don't move wet. When some colors, when you work on in wet, don't move in water. And raw sienna is one of them. So pretty much stay where I put it. Now I also see some lovely grays in here. So I'm going to take some cobalt blue and some Windsor orange and mix these together into a gray. And then I'm going to take and add lots of water to this gray. And I'm going to come in and paint some of these grays that we see. Actually, I see a little pink in here that I missed, so I'm going to add a little more pink. Now we're going to lose these edges. But we accomplished what we wanted. We got some gray tones in there. I'm also going to add some gray tones into this golden hair, his back here. So I'm actually adding blue and orange. That's what this mixture is. Never thought painting animals would be so much fun. It's really been great. Now it's getting quite dark down here, so let's not be afraid to come in and go just a little bit darker. And see, we're just laying in washes. We're not trying to do the final painting yet. And then up in here, it's pretty gray. It's quite gray in here. So this beautiful gray is going to serve us well to start building up some of these beautiful tonal washes. And then I always like to soften them. Keep my brush wet. Soften those edges. I'm going to mix some more. Little Windsor orange, little cobalt blue. This time I'm going to take it a little bit darker now and come in here and start painting in some of these lovely grays that are in the ear. Some of the grays I see over here. Some of the grays I see over here. Again, we're going to soften some of those edges. Now I want to warm this up a little bit. I'm going to take a little quinacridone burnt orange and add it on top of the grays and on top of the pinks and on top of the raw sienna. And where I see this darker value, I'm going to come in and paint that in. And this is all pretty much darker all the way down here. Oh, I like that warmer color. Nice. Again, we'll just lose it in a vignette style here. Soften some of these edges. And I'm going to take a little bit of this warmer color, come in here. So this is like my third layer. And that's how I like to work. I like to layer the color, all transparent, and build up these washes. So we'll move some of this color around here. This is also a color that doesn't move in water. It's awfully nice. Lose the edges and then we'll just not worry about it. We'll come back later and add more detail. Okay, now I want to put in just a little more tonal washes up here. I'm going to go back into more of the beautiful raw sienna. Now, as my paint gets drier, I can start thinking about the eyes and the nose and the mouth. Ooh, that's really what it's all about. So I do need to come in here and go just a little bit grayer. This is that same mixture of blue and orange. Again, I need to soften the edges. Oh, lovely. And it's a little grayer in here. So again, we're going to come in and gray this. And soften the edges. Okay, I'm going to take a short break and dry this so that I can come back and do the eyes and nose. One of the things I forgot to mention earlier is how important your reference is. It's like when you're doing portraits of children or anybody, you need to have proper light. So you can see how this is pretty good. I took this picture. It's got a lot of afternoon sun. These shadows are very dark down here. A little bit hard to differentiate some of the details. This is not bad. This is bad. You can see how all of the light is behind them and not enough light on the subject. Excuse me. This is about perfect. You've got the beautiful Rembrandt light coming in at about 10 o'clock or 4 o'clock, sometimes called. And you've got all these, the color is just so much richer when you have the light on it. And then you have this beautiful shadows over here. So this is ideal. Okay, I'm on completely dry paper. And one of the things I want to do now is I want to start working for some of the darks in the eyes, in the nose, and the mouth. So I'm going to take a combination of quinacridone burnt orange and French ultramarine blue. Now this is a color that is so dark, a value 9, that I will be able to go all the way to a value 9 on these. Now if I used Antwerp, I would get a dark green. So that's my reasoning for using the French ultramarine blue. It's got red in it, and it gives you a beautiful dark brown. Okay, the reason I'm using my script brush is it holds a lot of paint. If I were working like with a little number 1 brush, you can see the difference. I would certainly have a lot of control, but I'd have to be going for the paint all the time. So this is very, very pleasant, because I can still get these nice fine lines, but I can work much, much longer. It will just give me lots of control. So I'm also putting in some eyelashes, which are lovely. Not all dogs have eyelashes. And then there's a very dark band over the eye. So right now, everything has hard edges. And it looks pretty awful. So what we have to do is, I put a tissue in my hand, I wet my brush and shake it out, take out the extra moisture, and now the whole idea is to come in here and soften this edge so that we no longer have this really, really hard edge. And then as I come around here, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to pull out just a little bit of that color and form another soft edge and almost do what looks to be like more eyelashes. It's interesting. And then you just keep washing your brush and coming in and softening and losing these edges. Now both of these colors are non-staining, so that means you really can lose those edges. And then of course I have to keep turning the paper, excuse me, so that I can be in control here. So I need to come in, wet my brush, clean it off good, and just come in and keep losing, and softening this edge. It's a very, very soft edge. And then we can come in here and do just a little bit more with the detail. This really is fun. I love it. You can see that combination of colors gives me some really beautiful darks. Now I need to pull that dark in the eye out here just a little bit more. And this is the critical part of doing eyes and noses. You have to be able to soften edges and create these beautiful darks. They're not just hard outlines, they're very soft. Okay, now we're going to do the same thing with the nose here. The nose is very dark. My paper's dry, I'm in control. So I'm going to come around, paint the nostril, paint this really, really dark bulbous nose. And then it's dark up here, dark around this edge, and then there's more dark in here, quite a bit more dark. See, I'm leaving just a little bit of white there. Now I'm going to start this continuous lost edge. Right now they're all hard edges, but they're going to be softened. So you can see the script brush is perfect. I'm putting in these hairs and I'm creating these wonderful darks. I'm saving some whites. I always look at the gesture of the hair. Now his hair is coming down here, more or less across here. And it's looking darker. This is looking browner. I'm going to add a little bit more blue to it. So this will be even blacker. We need to put lots and lots of little dots and dashes because this goes way out. So we have to put little dots that we will later come in and soften. More little hair-like shapes here. Lots of little dots. More little hair-like shapes here. And here. And more little dots. And see, I don't have to worry about catching these edges while they're wet because this is a non-staining color and it will soften even after it dries. Now this is starting to come along. Up here I need to also come in with some dark shapes around the nose. It goes up here. And people get all nervous about doing this, but really it's just fun. Really fun. Can't beat it. Now my color's just a little bit darker, so I'm adding some darks. Now I'm going to wet my brush, come in here and soften this edge and pull that lovely shape out here. And see, this is actually should have a little red in it too. So I'm just adding a little coral. Noses are usually kind of pink. And now I'm going to, with my soft brush, I'm going to come in here and start losing these edges. Wet it, shake it, come around here, and see that leaves a little moisture on the tip there. And now in a kind of sawing motion, I'm going to come in here, soften, soften, soften. And just keep pulling out. See, now I'm in a lighter gray color. Now I'm pulling that lighter gray color out. This is really critical to get all this little detail. And if you put some down you don't like, you can remove it. It's all non-staining colors. So for example, I would never do this with the black that I made from alizarin crimson and phthalo green because it's way, way too staining. You would never be able to lift the color. It would soak in. See, now that's too much. See how I can come back and just lift the color. Very nice. Now I need to soften all of this a bit. Take this lovely gray and just keep pulling it out, pulling it out, pulling it out. You can see it's starting to look like his nose. That's great. A little more softness over here. A little more lifting over here. Push it back, push it back. His nose is actually a little darker, so I'm just going to add a little more color, spread it around. Now I'm going to start pulling some of this color down here. So I'm just picking it up from here. At the same time, I'm softening the edges. And then I'm just going to pull that down here because I need some grays. Pick up a little color here, pull it down here. And we're almost done. Now I'm going to soften this again, push it back a bit. Now we're going to come in and do the darks in the mouth. And they're very black. So I'm going to add just a little bit more blue. That's French ultramarine blue. That makes it very black. And it's dark along the center of his tongue here. It's very dark back here. So again, we're just going to kind of lay this in. We'll soften it later. Going to lay it in back here, all around his mouth. Now I have to look at the picture because I'm constantly redrawing. You never quite get it right. So I can just do a little redrawing with my brush. Now this is all pretty dark all along here. It's very dark in here. It's dark over in here, and it's very dark here under his tongue. So now we haven't lost any edges yet. We're just getting the basic shapes. Now back in the mouth itself, right in here, it's very red. So I'm going to mix a little red in with my dark color. I might have changed his teeth just a bit, but I'm not going to lose any sleep over it. Let's see, we'll come in here. A little bit of darkness here. A little bit of darkness there. So we pretty much have everything outlined at this point. Now it's time to come in with water. This is very exciting. So his tongue is red. We're going to come in. I'm going to just use my Quin Coral again. Start it over here. It's darker in the back. A little bit darker in here. Now I'm going to wet my brush, take off some of the moisture, and just pull the color to get the lighter values. And then we still need to have a little more darkness back here. So I'm going to pick up some of this black in the center of the tongue there and just kind of spread that around. Okay, now I'm going to come in with a little more pink, and I'll move this in just a little closer. And this is all pretty pink in here, so I'm going to let it pick up some of those beautiful darks. And we're going to just kind of roll that pink along here. And it's pretty pink down here at the base of that tooth. And now we're going to start softening, losing edges. So much of what we do is all done with lost edges. It's really fun, especially when you have such wonderful colors. These colors just soften and lift, and the edges, you can lose the edges. Now over here, see how I'm going to come in with just my damp brush, soften that color into a lighter value, and complete that edge. And then same over here, and you can see how this script brush is so fabulous. It holds the paint forever and the moisture. Okay, now we need to have just a little bit of pink, like a goom line here at the base of the teeth. Never thought I'd be painting the teeth of a dog, but hey, it's kind of fun. Now he's got a little bit of yellow, so again, I'm going to go into a raw sienna. Certainly not a bright yellow like a primary. This would just be a soft yellow. This is my raw sienna. And see, I'm just putting it on the dry. Now I've got my brush wet. I'm going to wipe off most of the moisture, and I'm going to pick up that edge there and lose it. Same over here, lose that edge, lose that edge, lose that edge. This is all inside his mouth, so it has to go into shadow. And back here we have to put all these teeth in shadow, because his mouth is creating a shadowed area. So even back here, this has to go back into shadow. Same way it did over there. I'm going to add just a little bit more shadow in here. Wet my brush, shake it out, take off the extra moisture, come in and push it back. Push it back. See how neat that works. Now if I think it needs a little more color, I can add it later when it's dry. And meanwhile, that's a good start on our mouth. There's still a little bit more pink in here. Now I'm going to come outside here and soften this edge. This is, you always get a soft edge when you've got little hairs coming down. And see, he's got like a little hairy chin here. He's also got a little bit of white fur below it, which is very cool. So we're just going to soften this edge with our brush. And always make sure you work with synthetic brushes, because synthetic brushes are going to give you that crispness, that strength that you need to lose these edges. A sable brush doesn't do that. Sable brushes are very soft. So there, now we've got his mouth. Now the next thing we want to do is to come in and start working in some of these darks into his ear. And this is that same mixture now, quinacridone, burnt orange, and French ultramarine blue. So the first thing I do is just sort of put the shapes in here as I see them. Then the next thing I do is come back and soften the edges. So you can go as far as you want to with this. Just keep putting in the shapes. We can do a few over here too on the inside of the ear. Now, wet the brush, shake it out, and this is the important part. We have to come in and lose those edges. And if you don't do that, it just looks too hard. It all has to be softened into some lovely hairs, soft edges. The soft edges are what make it look good. So when you first start doing this, you go, oh, I don't know if I can do this. And then you get started and you go, oh, this is kind of boring. Because it's a lot of the same thing. Coming back, softening, softening. But it works. Anything that works, you better get going. See, there's a little dark shape in here, a little bit warmer. I added a little more quin orange to my mixture. And again, come in, push it back, and then push it back from this side. And see, you've got a beautiful little shadowy area there, just with those edges. Now, I still want to come in and do this side of his hairline, body, a little darker. So I'm going to come in here. This is the quinacridone burnt orange with a little bit of French ultramarine blue. And now I'm going to come in and just push this into a nice soft edge. Pull it out. Into a lovely hairline. We can even leave a few hairs here. Pull it out into some hairs. And now we'll probably want to do the same thing here. We'll probably want to get just a little bit darker in here. So we'll put the color down and then we'll lift it back, way back. There's a lot of painters that they call direct painters. I'm not one of them. When I put the paint down, I almost always take it back, change it, soften it. It's just the way I like to paint. And now it's simply a matter of going through this ritual of pushing in. See, it's darker, the hair is darker in here. So I'm going to take, this is a mixture, more quinacridone burnt orange and less of the blue. And first of all, I just sort of get the general shape and direction of the hair. And then I just kind of move it along. This brush is fantastic. Look at I painted this whole thing with one dip. It's the only way to go. Now you know what I'm going to do. I'm going to take my brush, wipe it off, come in here and soften these edges. So they just sort of blend into the other hair. That's the important part. If you really analyzed all these edges, they would be very soft. Sometimes it's hard to get at these without turning the paper. So I apologize, but that's just the only way I can do it. Again, soften, soften, soften. And the good news is, even if it gets dry, this paper will, because the color is non-staining, you'll be able to do it. I'm working on Arches 140 cold press paper. And another beautiful thing about that is every time I layer another color, it doesn't activate the color underneath. So that allows me all this freedom to layer, 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 and not lose the color underneath. Okay, I'm going to do one last thing and we're done. I'm going to paint the background. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to wet it first, because I like to work wet into wet. So just clean water, my 1.5 inch brush. It's so beautiful. I can just wet this whole thing. A few strokes. And then my thought is that I would make it dark against light and light against dark. And I would use some of the same colors that are here. So I'm just going to grab a little more Quin Orange. And over here, where his head is light, I'm going to make it darker, a little darker yet. Oops. And then I'm just going to put a little bit of the raw sienna in here. Same colors that are in the painting. And I'm going to make it darker down here. And my thought is that I'll have a little passage of light coming through here. So I'm going to pick up a little bit of color over here. A little warmer, I think. Then I'm going to have this passage of light that goes through. So that means I have to come in and lose these edges. And this is a fairly light area here, so it wouldn't hurt to go just a little bit darker. There, that was easy. Now we're just going to let those colors run. And what I usually like to do is to take my script brush and just kind of catch those edges so that the hair can have a nice soft edge there. So it's certainly not going to hurt a bit to have some of that color come in and combine with the coat. Same down here. And see, I don't like that hard edge. So the easiest thing is just to come in, soften the edge, and just let it bleed back into the animal. So there you have it. That was really fun to do. Now, what I'll do, I'll still do just a little bit more fussing. I'm still going to come in and give them some more gray tones in here. And I'm going to go a little darker in here and probably down here. But I've basically covered all the techniques you need to do this on your own. I don't like this edge here. Got a little dark. So I think if I just come in and soften it, softening edges does everything. It's fabulous. This is a technique you can use on just about every painting you do. So, there you go. Happy painting. Well, I hope you enjoyed today's presentation. Please check out our online store at karlynholman.com to find all the supplies that you saw here today, as well as our specials, upcoming workshops, and much more. I'm Karlyn Holman, bidding you farewell. Thank you for watching.